Oh, there it is. Let's log in. Let's log in.
Good morning once again, and welcome to the panel discussion on Case 4 for regulations and the role of progress to date and expectations from NRAs. That is the topic. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is I am from the Finance and Regulatory Authority. I'll be chairing this panel discussion. On the panel, I have Ms. Jim Chamila from the African Union Development Agency. She is the head of the African Medicines Regulation Harmonization Initiative. Shima, can give a round of applause in advance. Next is Ms. Bukumashan, who is the founding member for the NRAS. She is a regulatory consultant. There is my anticipation. We have regulators from the panel next to
Okay, see right one.
assessor from the Tanzania Medicines and Enterprises Authority.
Remember
Last but not least, from Rwanda FDA, we have Dr. Vedas, who is the head of drugs department. Vedas. That we will have a cozy discussion, sitting down. So you would recall that the topic is envisioned role of the army, the second part, progress to date, and the last part, expectations from NRAs. So you would see that the composition of the panel would be covering these aspects. To start us off, we will be talking to the founding we'll start off with Gugu to tell us about the envisioned role of the AMA. What was the thought process? Who were the stakeholders? How did you envision that you would have ended there? Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I saw the camera on to
So I was asked to chair the task force that set up the and also develop a business plan for the African Medicines Agency. Some of you might not be aware that the AMA was actually not initiated by us as regulators. It was actually a top-down instruction almost from the Ministers of Health. The Ministers of Health for Africa, the entire Africa region, met, agreed that they needed to have an agency that could regulate products. And their main challenge at the time was substandard and counterfeit medicines. That's what they were focusing on. And then this was what the brief that we got, that we had to then set up this agency. You can imagine a lot of us were very skeptical to begin with. That what? Do they think this is the European Union? This is this is Africa. But anyway, the instructions had come down, so the Joint Secretariat was formed between WHO Afro and Auda NEPAD in order to drive this process, and they set up a task team, which I chaired, and the task team comprised of representatives from all the regional economic communities, from the agencies, and then we drew up the treaty. So the idea, if I can take you back to our thought process, if you can take me back to Helen Bruce's slide this morning, where she had WHO SRA, WHO PQ, regional initiatives, and then national agencies. Somewhere in there, that is where the African Agency is then supposed to fit in. And when we started developing the treaty, we quickly noticed that the AU is not structured like the European Union. There are no legislative instruments, although we're told there are some, but there was no legislative instrument to use. So we had to set up almost like an office in the name with a treaty, and then members had to accede to the treaty. Of course, I think there's been a lot of thinking behind that by the member states themselves, particularly as a result of COVID. Because suddenly, during COVID, regulatory agencies took on this really important role. Most ministers of health probably didn't even know the regulatory agencies. Until COVID, and suddenly they kind of get access to their products right because of these regulators. And then they realized the importance of regulation, and they were like, why didn't we set up this for just like we did with CDC, Africa CDC, where everyone, no one has to necessarily succeed, or all part of that. But anyway, that is what I'm going to, I'm sure they will resolve it at some stage. But the important thing is that the AU became stakeholders, the regulators on the continent became stakeholders in this whole process. As well as the works, became stakeholders in the process. And I guess the only stakeholders that I think mentioned is the manufacturers. But then we were going to regulate the manufacturers. And the idea, obviously, was that AMA could then make decisions in a similar way to WHO PQ that would then be adopted by the agencies on the continent. They need not reinvent the wheel. The work will have been done, they will have access to the report, and then all they can do is to then process the registration. Of course, that's a different conversation that we need to have, because we've seen how that works for the regional economic communities. But basically, think of the MPOX now. If we had AMA operating now, it would come through the AMA agency, and then all of us, regulators on the continent, would just take that decision and use it in our own decision-making process, quickly process it, and then within a short space of time, have product approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that background to the AMA. Perhaps now, since we are sitting next to Chim can tell us, we are aware, I am an NRA, so we are aware that there has been significant progress in the establishment and operationalization of the AMA. Please provide an update on the progress, because we are watching from a distance and we are privileged to have you. Thank you for making it to prioritize this meeting to tell us where we are at.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad that I'm speaking after Gugu, who actually was part of initiating the dream of getting us to where we are. And by that time, I remember there were the senior regulators mentoring some of us. So we are here today because we understand the vision that was there then. We understand the dream that had been set up. Of course, as she said, the ministers in the regional office agreed, and they tasked the AUD and NEPAD in collaboration with WHO to make this a reality. And I think where we are now is that this dream is indeed becoming a reality. And I would also touch on, of course, in my input, what Gugu talked about, if AMA was here. There are certain things that are happening, and I'm glad that you as the regulators know currently happening. So there are two things when it comes to making this treaty a reality. Of course, the first step happened, and we are very thankful that, as she said, ministers of health and the governments realized the role of the regulator during COVID. And everybody realized that we cannot get the products that we need unless the regulators open the door. And I think that triggered a very quick way of countries ratifying the treaty. Of course, as she is saying, there are two schools of thought, where now, last year in the summit, the member states actually reflected on, why did we do this as a treaty? Probably we should have just made it in a way that automatically all member states are parties to AMA without having to ratify the treaty. But at the time when we were operating, probably because there was no COVID, I remember we had suggested that we should use a statute like what forms the Africa CDC, not to go through the treaty way. But I think the AU then had no appetite in creating new institutions that are going to subsist on the AU. So the treaty means the parties to the treaty finance the treaty. That is why we ended up with the treaty route. But looking ahead and looking behind, I think the answers are ahead. I think the treaty makes AMA stronger, because there is the commitment to the parliament, to the level of parliament, that we are parties to this treaty. So though now it's not taking the 55 together, but our dream is that we should get to the 55. Currently, we have 29 member states that are full parties to the AMA treaty. And these 29 have formed all the required governance structures of the AMA. These are the Conference of State Parties, which is the highest decision-making body of the AMA, comprising of ministers of health. And recently, we've just formed the board earlier this year. We formed the board of the African Medicines Agency. And these have been putting together the different required documents that AMA needs for it to take off, including issues regarding to the governance mechanism of the AMA, building on the treaty of the establishment of the AMA, rules of procedures, and all those political documents that have to be adopted. But with the establishment of the board, we have also moved to the next step, which is now the actual setup of the administrative structures of AMA, starting with the finalization of the AMA Director General's TORs and the interim structure of the AMA. That has been worked on. Of course, the TORs for the DG are finalized and approved, and we are going to be advertising before the end of the year. And hopefully, we are going to be able to get a good AMA DG as to make this dream a real reality. Because unless we have strong leadership of the agency, we are going to have challenges. So we are going to be recruiting the AMA DG. We are hoping that by the end of this year, we'll have moved in terms of the steps towards the recruitment, because it has advanced quite a lot. But also, I forgot to indicate that what the Conference of State Parties, I'm sure most of us are aware that Rwanda is the current host of the African Medicines Agency. And they offered the offices of the African Medicines Agency, because we are planning to deploy the initial team to the offices of the African Medicines Agency before the end of the year. We have done the thorough assessment that is required of the AMA offices to see if everything is in place, and we can deploy a team at the African Medicines Agency before the end of the year. So that is actually work that has been done on the administrative part. However, let's remember that when the decision on the establishment of the African Medicines Agency was being made, it was made on the premise that we had moved as a continent when it comes to harmonization. And by that time, in 2015, the Executive Council actually made a decision that when we are putting together the business plan that Gugu talked about of the AMA, and when we are putting together the treaty for the establishment of the AMA, we need to make sure that we build on the foundation that we had set up through the African Medicines Regulatory Harmonization, which I think is already a plus, because it means we were not going to start from zero. We were going to start from somewhere. The regulators had already started working together through the regional economic communities. The capacity strengthening of the regulators had already started happening through the regional centers of excellence and other training programs that had been set up. So we had structures that were working. What we needed to do was to ensure that we position these structures to serve the AMA and to ensure that there's a linkage between what is happening in the RECs to what is happening in what is going to happen at the continental level. So when the AMA Treaty came into force, what we did was to take an audit of what we have. What do we have? What are technically, what structures are working? What structures are not working? Because we were not 100% perfect, we knew. And I think Gugu also talked about envisioning AMA to be like a PQ for the continent, right? And ensuring that countries then use those decisions. But we know with what has happened in the regional economic communities, some of the challenges that some countries have had to even utilize those decisions. So those lessons really provided us with a very good foundation to set up a system that will ensure that countries are also supported to be able to make decisions based on the recommendations that will come from the African Medicines Agency and the scientific opinion of the African Medicines Agency. So 4 important things to me that have happened so far that are critical in moving the needle forward as we move forward with the AMA. Firstly, it is the technical committees, because AMA is expected to utilize experts from NRAS and this or any other scientific experts across the continent or in the diaspora. But these are going to be coordinated through the expert technical committees that are going to drive the scientific work of AMA. Building on the work that we have been doing in the AMRH, we've been able to strengthen these technical committees to drive forward the work of the AMA. Currently, we have 10 of them that are fully functional and are supporting the African Medicines Agency set up in terms of technical aspects. The second one is that using these technical committees, we've been able to set up continental standards, continental guidance documents, and continental processes. I'm going to give examples of 2 technical committees that have really advanced in this work. The evaluation of medicinal products, which have developed a continental process for evaluation and listing of medicinal products. I'm emphasizing this because it will link to my next point of touching on what about if AMA was there, what would have happened during COVID, or what is happening now during Mpox. So the EMP has set up a continental process for evaluation of medicinal products and listing of these medicinal products at the continental level. Learning from the RECs, we have formed a group of heads of registration and marketing authorization, a forum at the continental level, which we are envisioning to support countries to translate AMA scientific recommendations and AMA decisions into national level actions. We want the forum to be able to dialogue and discuss some of the challenges that they're having in translating the continental recommendations into national level decisions. Third thing that has also happened that is critical is on piloting of these continental processes, both for EMP, evaluation of medicinal products, and the GMP, the Good Manufacturing Practice Inspection. We have set up a pool of experts that is really supporting the technical committees to drive this process. So we are currently in a pilot. We are actually thankful to the industry, both African manufacturers as well as international manufacturers that have responded positively to the call that we sent out in collaboration with SAPRA to receive applications and evaluate them at the continental level. It has advanced quite well. So to me, these really form the basis and the foundation for us to work together as a continent. What we have also done, with what Helen presented on the sequential kind of process that causes delays, and what Google said that somewhere in between, we are supposed to have AMA, even during emergencies, because Article 6 of AMA actually requires AMA to support member states in coming up with scientific recommendations following evaluation at the continental level, and supporting member states to be able to make quicker decisions in response to emergencies. And we actually currently, through the EMPTC, we have a guideline on emergency use authorization, which has been finalized. And this is the time to make use of that guideline, working in collaboration with WHO, what is happening at the WHO level, because we are a joint secretariat. So for those that are following us, we actually just yesterday launched a call building up on the pilot that we are doing to really receive applications for medicinal products expedited approval and supporting member states to make decisions at the national level. So that is work that we are doing. And if during COVID, we had these systems that we have currently set up, one, the expertise, pulling together the different experts on the continent, two, them coming together in technical committees to drive the work, three, the guidelines and the continental processes that have been developed, we would have acted even faster in pulling these experts together. Now, learning on that, MPOX has come. We are making sure that we collaborate with WHO and work on supporting member states to make quicker decisions and respond to MPOX. Thank you, Chair. I know I took long, but I wanted us to have an idea of where we really are, both technically as well as administratively and governance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. It was important to set that tone for us to know where we are at. Going back to Google, how were some of the anticipated challenges addressed? For example, the issue that Jim talked about, the regulatory harmonization that had progressed to a certain extent, and that to balance national as well as regional interests in the discussions leading up to the AMA.
From the beginning, we had this, I think it was a graphic figure, almost like the one Helen showed. But this one was, there are things you can do at national level if you're a regulator. And then there are things that can be done at regional level, collaboratively, the work sharing that we had already started. Then there's the continental approach. So when we started our discussions for the treaty, you'd be surprised that some member states actually wanted AMA to come and do local inspections of their distribution channels in the countries. And we're like, no. This is not something that AMA can do. Yes, AMA can assist perhaps if you have a manufacturer to do GMP inspections, provided that manufacturer obviously has plans to manufacture beyond your borders, is looking at regional and continental markets. But when it comes to your distribution channels, this is what you should be doing. So we're at pains to try and make them understand that the reason why you have these work sharing initiatives, you have these different levels, is to try and take the strain away from the national regulators, free up the space for them then to monitor their markets more effectively. So Dion can have a lot more inspectors to do the inspections on the ground of the facilities, because TUMI doesn't have to worry about having many assessors, because the money she can now put to the inspectors. And that's the whole thing. So we made them understand that this is how we will share the work on the continent. So your continental agency will look at those more complex molecules that you are unable to look at regional or national level, because maybe at regional level you only have one person who has the expertise to do that. But if we pull our regional experts, bring them up to the continental level, we will have 5 or 6 such experts who can then work together and make a decision that can be applied by the other agencies. It took some time because to persuade particularly the members from Francophone Africa, because I think their regulatory structures are kind of set up differently. Hardly any of them, maybe Senegal now is moving towards an independent agency, but most of the others were like government departments within their ministries. So it took them a little while for them to realize that no, AMA is not going to be doing local inspections for them. But that is how I think it was through dialogue with the members themselves, through horse trading. And when I look at the functions, I mean, if I were to rewrite the treaty today, I think it would be a lot shorter than what it is now. You know, it's like when you read an essay you wrote like 2 years ago, you think, oh my goodness, what was I saying? You know? But so anyway, at least we've got the treaty. Now we work on refining it. But I think there was an acceptance. But what worries me is what I have heard during this meeting, which I was not aware of, that there are certain member states that will not take the WHO PQ decision and implement it or have to redo the whole process. That worried me a little bit, and I'm thinking, we need to work on our African colleagues. And maybe through the technical committees and the committees that you've set up, it's important that we make them aware that this is an important process. It is actually helpful to your agency because the decision, the assessment has been done, the report is there, take it to your technical committees or whatever, and let them make the decision. But the decision, surely, you can say no, if we have specific, very strong reasons why you think you should not. But the point is, make that decision quickly, you know, so that people can move ahead. The work has already been done. I think we are slowly getting there. We are slowly getting people to accept that this is a process that is to their advantage. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that aspect. The other area that is key for regulators is funding and resource mobilization. What were you thinking at that time?
So, if you look at the original business plan that was done for AMA, we obviously clearly understood that AMA cannot be up and running immediately without external support. And we're going to rely on the usual support from our usual partners to support us at least for the first 5 to 10 years. Maybe the second 5 years would be reducing that support. But one of the other things that had been suggested in the original business plan was that we could have an endowment fund. Now, this is something that I'm not sure is used a lot on the continent. I'm not even sure people are aware of, but I know that a lot of programs and projects, for instance, in the US, uses endowment funds. So you get someone to give you some money, quite a substantial amount of money, and then you put that in a fund that will then grow at a respectable rate per annum. And all you use is the interest from that fund. You do not touch the capital sum. You use that. And having seen the level of support that there was for COVID, we thought it could be possible for us, for AMA to be able to raise sufficient funding. And the people that we wanted to target were actually our own African billionaires, because it is time for them to come to the party and, support the African initiatives. So that was one of the other things. The third thing was we envisioned a process where AMA could generate resources by inspecting and providing certificates of CPEs. What are they doing for raw materials? We noted that a lot of active principles on the continent, I mean, there's nowhere where you can make a reference as to whether this is an acceptable API or not. There are a few that WHO has, but it's in WHO's pre-Q list of actives. There are many other actives that no one is even looking at. And we thought this could be a source of revenue for the AMA to actually now develop an API database of approved APIs where inspections have been done and quality assessments of the products have been done. And therefore that also reduces the assessment time for the assessors, because that has already been done globally. All you need to make sure is that you source one of those products. So those were the three main sources of funding that we're looking at.
I see Chim is taking notes to explore some of those.
We have already started exploring them. We are exploring them.
So back to you, Chim. You did allude to the fact that there is expectation. In fact, in the treaty, there is an expectation of the pandemic response or emergency response. How, if AMA was established during the time of COVID, how do you envisage its role would be? And also, you may want to combine this with MPOX. How do we envisage AMA responding to MPOX at the moment?
Yes, thanks. And before I go to that, I just wanted to say that the business plan that you developed then is actually becoming very useful in some of the work that we are doing. And we are really advancing quite much, even on the API database and API master file procedure. It's work that has already started and we are moving with it. So thanks to the work that you did then. And yes, the treaty, and as you're rightly saying, the treaty really requires that the AMA should provide scientific recommendations to member states during times of emergencies. And hence, AMA, in collaboration with Africa CDC, by the way, is supposed to really provide the support that the member states need to approve products in an expedited way, and also to make sure that the countries are able to procure. That's where now the Africa CDC comes in with the food procurement mechanism and other procurement support, and with other partners that is being provided to the member states. So looking at where we are, actually I always say that we are already doing something about the African Medicines Agency. It's not a dream that we are not seeing it becoming a reality, and we are not seeing structures being set up. Where we are sitting, we already have certain structures that have been set up. During COVID, it was difficult. Of course, we used the harmonization initiatives in the regional economic communities, the AVAREF process to look at certain products, vaccines for COVID, and support member states to make decisions. However, I think where we are standing today, I look at three key TCs that learning from what happened during COVID and how member states struggled during COVID. I remember members, at least some were proactive to talk to each other bilaterally. You know, Tumi would talk to, Ghana, FDA, Mimi, what are you doing, my colleague? How do I learn from you? How do we share data? And quickly they were able to bilaterally make certain decisions. But if AMA was then active, or if the work that we are doing now was then happening, it would have been easier because there would have been a platform that pulls together expertise from the member states, use existing guidance that is there through the technical committees, and be able to quickly mobilize and use global support. WHO is always part of us to make quick recommendations at the continental level and support member states. So where we are with MPOX is that we have invoked what we have. We have to make use of what we have. We have to make use of the EMPTC. We have to make use of the AVAREF platform to be able to support member states to review applications for products that are targeting MPOX and provide reports, as Google is saying. If we have a continental report, member states would easily then, NRAs would easily then take that report and utilize it to quickly make their own national level decisions. So we are actually looking at MPOX as a test case to us. How are we going to act as a continent? Are we going to be able to coordinate, to collaborate, to pull our structures that we have put together and utilize knowledge that is existing out there to make a continental recommendation and support member states to implement that recommendation through the EMPTC and other structures that we have formed at the continental level? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now need to move to the regulators, to the NRAs. And to go first would be Diana, where we are now looking at what is AMA doing for the NRAs. You can take your presentation. Perhaps you can go to the podium. You can.
Okay, thank you. I'm Diana from TMDA, as introduced. Actually, as we know, Tanzania, among any other countries in sub-Saharan Africa, we are still facing the challenge of the fragmentation in the regulatory systems, and also the management system, the processes that we have, and also the challenge of personnel, having enough experts and competent personnel and resources within the regulations. And based on that, Savior came, AMA came into place, and we are still on board making sure everything is according to the plans that are placed. So in 2023, Tanzania was the 27th country to ratify to AMA treaty, as well as Rwanda. So we are all into support in all the efforts that are done to date. So there have been a number of involvements of national regulatory authorities, all the technical committees in which Madam Chim has been mentioning, the GMP technical committee, medicine evaluations, approving the continental listing of medicines. Parallel there have been involvement of all different NRAs from Africa, a number of regulatory guidelines for human pharmaceutical products, biosimilar, biotherapeutics products, and vaccines have been developed to date. So there's a huge involvement from AMA with the NMRIs. And also, there's also involvement into the medical devices area. There's African Medical Devices Forum involvement between different NMRIs, in which to date, there's a requirement for the expression of interest for the continental listing of the medical devices, in vitro diagnostic devices, as prescribed by the African CDC. So there's quite a progress and involvement between AMA and the NMRIs. Going forward, there's also capacity building to the NMRAs from AMA, a number of GMP trainings and medicine assessments, pharmacovigilance, post-marketing surveillance, clinical trial trainings, GMP trainings have been conducted. And in addition to that, to date, there is a number of ARACOs that have been assigned. So it means one NMRI is providing capacity building to the others. So TMDA, FDA Ghana, Egypt, and SAPRA, they are among assigned ARACOs in which they'll be providing the capacity building, especially on the areas of vaccine regulatory oversight, in which is the area in which we need quite a support in among African countries. We also have some reliance mechanisms. As we know, as Madam Chim said, there have been a number of regs that are there in place. What they do now is cementing or fortifying them, whatever they've been doing. So a number of reliance has been going on among the regs and the NMRIs. And also all these, they provide a positive contribution towards functioning of the AMA MRIH as well. So this is a busy slide, but it's just giving an overview of some of the achievements from the EAC REC, where Tanzania and Rwanda, we are both coming from there or we are involved. A number of GMP inspections have been conducted. A number of scientific joint review, joint assessments have been conducted, and then a number of applications have been registered into respective NMRIs. A number of standards and guidelines, technical documents have been developed to ensure that access of safe and efficacious medicines is available to all the citizens around the region. Some of the barriers in these collaborative procedures in which the NMRIs are also involved is that we have a limited capacity among NMRIs. Each NMRIs have different level in different aspects in terms of resources and capacity and expertise. We also have a challenge into expertise of review of complex formulations such as new chemical entities or advanced therapies, in which we know out there there have been more advanced developments on these areas. But when it comes to Africa, we know that NMRs, they are still at infancy level when it comes to this area. There's also lack of information sharing platform. As Madam Chim said, there's a lot of effort done into developing these systems at AMA level, but this is also quite a challenge among the RECs. And also there's also, when it comes to reliance, there's a challenge of accessing full evaluation reports, in which we know that if we could have access to this, it could facilitate the expedited review. So what needs to be in place for AMA, similarly to other collaborative procedures? It means we need AMA to figure out about sustainability of it, because even the RECs are still struggling with the issue of sustainability. So for the regional collaborative initiatives, the question mark regarding resources should be solved and seen into far future. And also, we need AMA also to consider the expanded product scope for regional review, because the RECs just managed to cover a portion of the varieties of products that we have, the medicinal products, and also to increase promotion of the stakeholders' engagement. NMRIs also have a number of expectations from AMA. We need, especially during the time of COVID-19 outbreak, we saw that there was a challenge of lack of equity. So AMA need to figure out, in case of any outbreak, there should be equity in accessing the medicines, and also equity in speeding the availability or the accessibility of all the medicines or medical devices that they are required in question in that scenario. Also, improvement of the harmonization of technical standards and also the regulatory cooperation, work sharing, and reliance. We know that there's already plans for the emergency use listing and the expedited continental evaluation. So these are among the things that we're highlighting. We're expecting them that in AMA, all these important points will be taken into considerations. We also expect that AMA will eliminate the issue of the regulatory fragmentation among the NMRAs and the RECs, and through diplomacy with other bodies or NGOs, African Union, African CDC, and other related unions that are involved within Africa. They will be organized and collaborated by AMA and make sure the goal is reached. Okay, other expectations by the NMRAs, the issue of the digital tool. As we know, there's the development of the API drug manufacturing file for the API manufacturer, from the API manufacturers. We know that AMA, they are working on it, but these are among the challenges in which NMRAs think that we need to avoid duplication of work. One NMRA has assessed the API, and again, another one is repeating, and again, when it reaches at REC, we are repeating again, assessing the APIs. So this can be tackled by AMA. And also we should have the streamlined processes, and also we should have issue of virtual clinical trials and digital health technology during time of outbreaks. It's very important to be considered. As we remembered, we had issued of the virtual inspections, GMP inspections during time of COVID-19 out there. That was one of the mechanisms that was considered positive and encouraging. So we should capacitate our regulators to make sure that they are capable, and even the regulatories are capable of conducting the virtual inspections, as well capacitating on the areas of the pharmacovigilance and the clinical trials the same way, and also the opportunity to the research and the development activities. During time of COVID-19, there was issue of transparency in Africa. We expect AMA is going to be the center of it all and manage all the issues related from the regulatory overseeing with respect to the transparency. So that's one of the points that we have highlighted, and also the expedited review, and also emphasis on the pooled procurement. As we have heard from previous speakers, there's still a gap on this area. So in conclusion, that is an overview in which we expect that AMA will go to enhance the regulatory efficiency, and at the end, the public is going to make sure that they're having the quality and efficacious medicines for all. Thank you.
Yes, carry on to the left. On the expectations.
Thank you. I have also a presentation. I'm waiting for it to be displayed. Yeah, in fact, in addition to what my colleague Diana presented, I prepared some slides on these two expectations from NRAs. One is the regulatory harmonization to all health products, not necessarily to stick on human medicines. Again, we would like to advocate for building and maintaining efficient relationship with the industry, because sometimes there is such gaps or kind of game of like Tom and Jerry between NRAs and the industry. But we really need to create something that should be kind of complementarity, yeah, between NRAs and the industry. Okay, so For this small introduction, I would like to highlight about the fact that there is a big common problem which needs a big common solution. In fact, there is a limited access to quality, safe and efficacious medicines, and this contributes to numerous health problems, we all know. And this is partly due to two things: the lack of pharmaceutical manufacturing capacity, which is something really we need to build strongly as a continent, and also the weak medicines regulatory systems. These 2 points are crucial, and if addressed, we can really achieve the target. Still on this problem, which is common, we have a series of questions everyone should ask. What is the solution? How can this solution be found? Who are most concerned, the responsible, of course, and when this is expected to be found? As a solution, actually, this is the responsibility of everyone. Of course, we shall say now, it is AMA. It was created for this purpose. But not only AMA, it is me and you. It is the responsibility of everyone. It is WHO. It is each country commitment. It is all continents across the world. It is everyone, finally. And why? It is because the world is no longer a village. It became now a family where everyone has to cherish everyone. Otherwise, it can't work and we'll always face problems. But this is really the high time to have a common solution. How can this be achieved? It is by accepting each other, by valuing each other and working together, because we have a same destiny, a same fate. And also, of course, who will do this? It is everyone, as I said in number one, about the solution. But when can this be done? Actually, I would say it is late, but we still have time to run fast and reach the target. Going to my subject number two about actually the expectation on regulatory harmonization to all health products. This is important because it has so many benefits. Benefit number one is to increase efficiency among and in regulatory agencies, because there is also need of that independence sometimes to take on decisions, but keeping in mind that others, the same decision will help them. And also keeping in mind that also at a certain point, in certain circumstances, we will also need others. That is why the harmonization is so important, because this will really help to achieve the targets. Number two benefit is to reduce duplications. People or NRAs are wasting resources and their time while the same work is being done elsewhere. And we are neighbors, so there is no need really to duplicate and waste resources. Another benefit is that harmonization, it promotes access to the needed product, quality, safe and efficacious. It promotes the accessibility. Another point which sometimes people forget is that this will promote the affordability and availability. There are some NRA who said, we don't care about availability. These are business things. We are focusing only on sciences. No, we need to understand that this is an entire ecosystem, a whole value chain. So availability and affordability is critical, and harmonization helps a lot to achieve this point. Another point is also to promote trade, business, investment, research and development, industry in general, and so on. Because people will invest, and knowing that once they finish their research, everything, the product will easily access the largest market. And at the end, we also have to keep in mind that harmonization is the potential tool to promote good reliance practices. From Rwanda, we have a very good success story of where we, in a short time, we came up to register around 2,000 products because of reliance. Through MOUs with the different NRAs, we should easily recognize the work they did. And this was extremely helpful. And we could not end up our backlog without really having this mechanism for reliance. When we go to another need here is about extending the scope to other health products, because we know health products are large. We have medical devices. Sometimes people think about human pharmaceutical products, and that's all. But we have a lot of products, medical devices. There are so many. We have also think about cosmetics, a large game of products in cosmetics. Also veterinary products, food product, etc. This is what also we are expecting from AMA. We are sure that they are thinking about, but it has also to come soon. And another point, expectation, is the building and maintaining efficient relationship with the industry. In fact, this is applicable to life in general. Good relationships is the key for success everywhere. It is applicable everywhere. So having a good relationships with the industry will help us really to achieve in a record time. And also, we need to think about creating or establishing the mechanism to support industry at all stages, because we have bad experiences of some industries who start secretly their businesses, and at the end they invite NRAs to come on board, and unfortunately the answer is you don't comply, you have to destroy, which is a failure to everyone. But changing the mindset and working with them from the beginning, it helps, so that step by step we can go together and show them the compliances, the requirements, and at the end, it is a success story and you have the products which are needed. Another point about that we have to keep in mind that we all serve the population, including ourselves. We are also consumers of the product we regulate. So keeping in mind that will really help the friendship, the collaboration with the industry, and of course, to wisely manage this and avoid conflict of interest. But this is very possible, and this is an important point we have to think about. And I think even AMA can develop some documents that can help people properly managing these good relationships with the industry. And yet, we also need at the end to create very conducive regulatory environment that promote a very good relationship or for consumers and producers' interests, because NRAs, we are in the middle. We have to protect first the consumers, but also we need and we have to think about the interests of producers. So that's role of being in the middle is very important, and people need to really know about and take into consideration. So I have a graph there. Sorry, that I like that graph, that figure. It is the medicine policy whose title is A Tree That Bears Fruits. AMA started as an idea. It was the seed. After the seed, it grows slowly, because it can't grow in a day and become a tree with the fruits. Then each tree has trunk, branches, leaves, and at the end, the fruits. But now, the context in which we are, we really need AMA to become a big tree in a record time. But we have so many challenges and activities to do. In the root level, we have the different stakeholders, different key players. We have procurement, we have industry, we have government, we have media, we have schools, research centers, and so many other key players. Everyone has responsibilities, has a role to play so that it becomes a success. And everyone needs to have a very clear roadmap, action plan, so that this achievement becomes reality in a well-specified time. I remember yesterday in one of the sessions, we were informed that similar ideas were discussed many years ago, and now it is repeating. We don't want this to be repeated 20 years later. It has to be real. So at the level of trunk, we have different layers where you have monitoring and evaluations, because someone knowing really the target should have a clear plan and evaluate it and identify who does what, when, how. Really, this is important. The human resources, development, capacities. At the end, we also have the selection. Which products do we have to start with? Because people, because of poor, let's say, planning, should start by everything. But we are very sure that now there is a systematic way of doing things so that at the end, AMA becomes successful. And at the end, to be short, we have the fruits. The fruits will be to have good quality product. We will have the good health for all. We will have affordable and available products and so on. So I think I'm at the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
So that round of applause is not for you only, Pastor, it's for everyone. We have come to the end of this first part from the panel. Can I invite questions or additions? We have strong support from our host, Sapra. Can we have a roving mic, please? I see two hands. Two hands this side and one that side, please.
So thank you very much. That was a superb presentation, and just getting the understanding of where things are. Wonderful. My question actually comes to the NRAs and says, in a historic world, you've raised your money through managing registration processes and renewals of registrations. In a new world, where you're going to move to a world of reliance, and your function is going to be more about enforcement, post-market surveillance, and pharmacovigilance. How do you make money? What work is happening to re-engineer the business model of the NRAs so that the hole that's going to come when you don't have all those registration incomes is going to be filled by something that allows you to focus on the new role of the future?
We will get all the questions, and then there were two hands this side.
Okay. Can I ask 4 questions?
We are okay for time, so please, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Professor Samuel from the University of Western Cape. I think I'm going to start with Hammer. So I know there's been conversation around capacity development, and one of the things that I'm looking at is building capacity and translating that in those guidelines into some sort of harmonized competencies. Because the people we train, I speak from experience where my class, people come from every part of Africa. And when we talk about some things, we have to go general. It's easier to talk about the EU because we have because of a sort of harmonized system. When I talk to the guys from Kenya, everybody speaking different languages. So that's one thing. I do harmonize these competencies. Yeah. Then the second one, I know the REC also work in capacity development. One of the regulators mentioned the fact the RECs need to speak to each other. And I've been part of curriculum development with one of the RECs, particularly in Rwanda. And I still don't see, there seems to be parallel lines amongst the RECs in terms of capacity development, and it's concerning for me. One of the things I've taken personally to do is because I also teach pharmacy students, final year pharmacy students, to shift their orientation towards what is possible beyond working for chain pharmacies. My apologies to chain pharmacies. But I'm beginning to say there are a lot more out there. And the shortage of regulators that you spoke about will not happen if these people don't know about it. We have industries making some, accounting industries and other industries making road trips, having functions in the university. I don't see us in the universities. People don't know us until they get out there. So we need to find out, get people to know who we are at that level. So maybe some road trips, some enlightenment programs in the university will also help to increase the capacity and the numbers we have. And finally, my friend from Rwanda, which spoke my mind in terms of the industry. What I also have, the dynamics I have in my class, I have people from NRAs, I have people from industry sitting in the same class. And we're having a group discussion, or you give them a group work, and you see the divergent opinions on the particular guidelines. So it's one thing to write it. It's about communication is two ways. Did you hear what I say? When you put the guidelines there, did the industry understand what the guideline? Can those guidelines be translated into my processes if I'm a local manufacturer? Can it translate into my processes? And how does it help my business model? I'm here to make money. It's not, so you coming in, the perception is that you come in as an NRAS to victimize me and to give me those WHOPQ that I cannot meet. That's current perception right now. How do we change that? And that has to do with relationship, how we, meet with each other and, talk to each other. You said that we are all asking the question, do we all use the same medicine we regulate? You made a statement. And if that is the case, then we have common goals. We are not here to victimize, but we need to change that perception. Thank you.
Good afternoon, panel. Thank you for the presentation. I'm Kitlarim Polori, Business Development Manager from CSIR. I support the health portfolio unit at the CSIR. So I deal with a lot of products from medicinal herbs to diagnostic kits. My first question would be to the NRAs, particular to Tanzania. Recently, we had a project, EU funded, under the ARV value chain, where we followed the WHO guidelines to saying you can register a product with a long history of use. So we had to do scientific validations to do that. And we're excited to say, no, we are going to go to Tanzania. And thank you, my colleague, for speaking about the guidelines, which are written, but they communicate a different language to what you need to do. And it was so unfortunate for us that the TDM guys were nowhere to be found. We struggled to get through to the colleagues in Tanzania because we thought in terms of medicinal plants or herbs, you've got such a good fit for what we want to do. And this goes to harmonization. How do you, as the regulators for Africa, I mean, we know everybody has used medicinal products. People are using medicinal products. For them to be even synthetic, they come from plants. But how do we define traditional medicine as complementary medicines? In terms of regulation, we need to make that process seamless. I mean, as a start to many things. Now, traditional healers, oh, I want to register my product at SAPRA, And if I've registered a product, now we had to opt to go to MCAS to register that particular product for both Eswatini and Zimbabwe, because we thought we would register the product for Eswatini in Tanzania because of the bilateral, so it would make things easy for the counterpart. So how do you guys ensure that in that space of medicinal herbs, we are speaking the same language, the processes? Because once I've registered at MCAS, it means I must come back. Likely SAPRA might approve, but they also have stringent processes. So how do you guys ensure that we really need to, there are many medicinal products, but people are stuck in terms of registering their products, and they need to be out there. The second one was in terms of the diagnostic kits. Now that we would have registered one, how do we then register it into another, that process? Because when you develop a low diagnostic, you are actually targeting Africa because that's where the products are needed. How do we ensure that transition from registering from one country to another? Are we going to go through AMA? Thank you.
I am torn. Okay, let's have all the questions then. I think Portia was first. But it's okay if it's already there.
Thank you. Mine was just going to be a comment and also to respond to Prof behind me.
Oh, thank
but
you.
I think I will let the panel answer and then I can also add in. Thank you.
That's okay.
Good afternoon. Dion Pooven, SAPRA. I missed the last presentation, so my question might actually be answered, but I'll ask it anyway. You know, being in South Africa and how we control our regional supply chains, in Africa, we're only as strong as our neighbor, right? To make sure that we control the whole region of Africa, to make sure that all our people get quality products and nothing infiltrates our supply chains. So my question is, what are the strategies on the continent to make sure that no member state gets left behind? How are we getting to a point of where all member states are equal under AMA in terms of their capabilities, their strengths, how their regulations are set up within Africa? Because you'll get some strong regulators, and we might work on that in order to strengthen what AMA does. But at the end of the day, we want all 55 member states to be as strong as each other. What are the strategies to address that?
Okay, so let's take the questions, starting with the regulators. I'm sure you were noting which questions are relating to yourself, starting with Vedesta.
Thank you. Actually, this is a trick question, but I have to try. And one of the things that are highly needed in regulatory ecosystem, it is flexibility. And sometimes to use unconventional approaches. For example, when it is about money generating, to have budget to run the NRA, we also have two schools of thoughts. There is a school saying that NRA is not money-oriented agency. It is public health-oriented. The government should, depending on the first school, government should take in charge everything the NRA will need to ensure that the right product is on the market. But because of laws, regulations, there are other NRAs which have to fight and find their own money so that they can run. So it is a matter of, let's say, of context. But this can even be another expectation should address to AMA, would better have that mindset that the NRA should have some reasonable money they can generate, but not really being money-oriented, but keeping in mind that their main mandate is public health protection. So that is why it is not easy, but I would say it is important that each country, as we said, the answer for the solution is everyone, including government, countries, their commitment, so that really NRAs should have all needed support, all needed resources to effectively do their work. Thank you.
Vedesta, while you still have the mic, comment on the issue of a facilitative regulator, not a warring one. I know you had already alluded to in your presentation, but there was this question to say how our NRA is facilitating then issues around traditional medicines, the regulations thereof, the guidelines too technical to an extent that they can't be translated into anything meaningful by the industry. So practical.
Okay, thank you. The best practice is that during the development of any regulatory document, the stakeholders should be always consulted, because at the end, you are the implementers. The criteria you have to be part of, you have to be consulted. And if needed, you should also say, this is a requirement which is not practical. Why can't you change? These are things which should be implemented by all NRAs. And at least these, let's say, NRA which are being graded, certified to maturity level 3, maturity level 4, they know that this is the WHO recommendation. We have to engage stakeholders so that at the end it becomes a document where stakeholders, implementers, they contributed to their development, because it will become easier for them to implement. And yet we know that industry, they have also scientists. And the good thing, the beauty of this ecosystem, that sometimes someone who used to be in the regulatory environment moved to work in industry. And vice versa, someone who worked in the industry comes to work in the NRA. So meaning that they have the same knowledges. So we should also be jointly developing documents that will become easy, user-friendly to everyone. I think this should be the solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me share an anecdote on your last point. There was one regulator who wrote a letter to an applicant, and then they resigned and went now to work for the applicant. When they got there, they were given their letter to say, now, translate this letter. And they were at a loss. So it's practical issues that are coming up, and we are delighted that we are having dialogue. At least the regulator acknowledges that there should be a dialogue, but we struggle as regulators sometimes to then be able to be at the same level with the applicant, to explain in a manner that would make them move through the product development stage, going to a stage where the product is now registered. So we acknowledge that we are learning in that area to be able to facilitate, but still remain regulators, but facilitate now that the products are being manufactured, they are being developed in our backyard. We are used to working with applicants that were developed in their own countries, and now they have experience to be able to interpret the guidelines that WHO would have taken us through. TMDA, you want to comment?
I wanted to comment a bit regarding the money. Where are we going to get the money? Yeah, just as my fellow said, yeah, for the regulators, yes, they are supposed to like provide service, but the same struggle we also experienced in the REC, for example, in the EAC, we were receiving support for a number of years from different donors and supporters, but after some time we are supposed to sustain ourselves. So the RECs had to come up with a sustainability plan in which they expected that from this plan they can get money to sustain the operations and also contribution from the individual NMRAs to the EAC. So into that plan, they have distributed the budget or the requirement to each type of category of applications, like from GMP and from medicine registrations. A little bit of a top-up fee has been added to it, and it's like a 6 to 10 years plan in which progressively they expect that the REC is going to sustain its own activities. So such mechanisms have been kept into subject, and that the sustainability plan is already endorsed in all the NMRAs in EAC, and we are looking forward together with AMA, we are going to sustain. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Can I just comment again on the funding aspect? When we started Zazibona and started doing joint inspections, there was fear from one of the agencies that they would lose a large source of revenue to the initiative, because with Zazibona we're very clear, we're going to collect the fees collectively. The funds were going to go into the Zazibona port, not to the agency. So there was this fear that, oh my goodness, they're going to lose this revenue. But it turned out that the percentage of revenue lost, given the number of applications that you got, was not significant enough to affect their operations. And so it will be, you will find that with the continental process, again, the continental process is not going to address the large percentage of applications that national agencies receive. So they will still have access to those revenues. And in any case, even if you're using Reliance, you can still develop obviously a structured fee that is a little bit a lot less than what you would pay if we're going through a full process, but there'd still be a fee for registration and fee for maintenance of that registration. So in terms of revenue loss, I don't see it as a real feature coming from an agency that was wholly funded from fees. So we haven't seen any impact at all on any of these initiatives that we've been involved in.
Amma, you be the next one, but before that, we have another regulator in the audience who wanted to comment. Portia, if we can have that roving mic, please.
Thank you, Chair. My comment was with regards to the issue of human resource capacity, for regulators. I'll start by commenting on what we have done in our HR strategy. So what we would do is that we would visit universities and all that, and then, just to ensure that the final pharmacy students are aware of, what the regulator does and so forth. Maybe some of them might be interested in taking their career, coming to work for the regulator and so forth. And also going to, with regards to maybe Jim will address this regarding the ARCOS. We are a regulatory, center of excellence with regards to regulation of biological, vaccines and biological products. And with that platform that MRH has put, forward is for us to help each other as regulators with regards to capacity and, learn from each other, and also ensure that we also have, the tools that we're using, and also the guidelines are standardized and so forth. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jim?
Yes, thanks. And she has started touching on the capacity one. The ARCOs, that's the whole purpose that they were established. And we are glad that some of the ARCOs are really doing a good job, by the way, when it comes to supporting other NRAs, supporting other regulators in terms of capacity strengthening. Others have even training programs that they have established that are now funded by themselves. We are not even injecting any funding. I'm looking at what Zimbabwe has done in terms of even mobilizing resources. One other important aspect is that we are seeing some of the ARCOs establishing partnerships between the NRA and an academic institution. The case of TMDA and MUHAS partnering to be an ARCO. In a way, it's sustaining, and I've seen quite a number of posts from Prof. Kale on how they're trying to integrate the work that is being done within TMDA and in the region in the academic curriculum at MUHAS, which is, I think, something that was the heart of establishing ARCOS. And that's where we were coming from when we were saying, okay, it can be an NRA on their own, but it should also be an NRA in partnership with an academic institution, because that's where we know we start, building that culture in the students as they are going out to look at the other options. You have also raised another important point of harmonizing competences that are coming out of these universities that will support regulatory work. Looking at where we are going as AMA and the joint work that we are going to do at the continental level and the regional level, but also looking at the reliance that we are promoting and the confidence building of one regulator in the other. I think it just makes sense that we need to involve academic institutions as well, looking at the training programs that are being offered. What do we do? And I'm not going to talk details about it because the chair of our advisory committee on establishment of the African College of Regulatory Science Professionals is here. I think Google is going to touch more on that, on what exactly are we doing, because I think it's an important aspect that we need to also emphasize on when it comes to preparing those regulators of the future that we are looking at, those that will work both within the regulatory authorities, but also those that will work in the industry. How do they understand the regulatory space? I wanted to comment on that. The second one that I wanted to comment on is the linkage with the industry and ensuring that AMA, as AMA is setting up and it's strengthening itself, the work that is currently being done, how are we involving the industry? We have tried as much as possible to have platforms for engaging industry, especially when it comes to the development of the different guidelines that TMDA also presented on development of continental processes. Will this make sense? Will this work? Can you participate? Actually, the feedback from industry has been very positive in the forums that we have convened. However, we need as much as possible to make it systematic in a way that it must not be ad hoc, because we want to do a pilot, then we will convene the industry and talk to them about the pilot. We need to make it as a feedback mechanism, and the linkage has to be strong. We are looking at models that have been used by others. European Medicines Agency, they have a very formalized way of engaging the industry, and they have a framework that they use to engage the industry. We are looking at that, and we're also putting together a framework that will support the continental processes when it comes to engagement with the industry, especially with the work that we have started doing under EMP and the GMP. And I will comment on the diagnostics, the medical devices, the MDF. I think there was a comment also that should an applicant want to get into the African market, what happens? You have it registered, of course, in one country, but you want to penetrate the continental market. This is why AMA is there. And just like we have done with medicinal products, I think TMDA talked about it a bit when she talked about AMDF, that we are developing a similar process, a continental process for IVDs. And we're expecting that we'll expand to other, medical devices as we go along. But we have to start from somewhere. We actually started with the EMP because we wanted to learn. We wanted to see, will it work? Will the pilot work? We will get interest from the industry. Will they look at this as an opportunity? We have seen that the answers on most of those are ticks, positive ticks. Yes, 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 yes. So we want to use the lessons that we have gained in the last 2 years of the EMP process at the continental level to apply it to other products that AMA is going to be looking at. Last, financial sustainability. It's a question not just for the NRAs. It's a question for the RECs, and it's a question for AMA. And actually, AMA, if we don't think about financial sustainability now and expect it to work in future, it will be very difficult. So currently what we're doing, building on the lessons from the RECs, she has talked about the ESC model that has been developed. And also Google talked about what they tried in the Zazibona approach. I remember when we were having the initial discussions on the pilot, the heads of agencies, it was in Rwanda, we had an AMRC meeting. And the heads of agencies said that, no, don't touch on fees for now. Please remain quiet. Do this your own, find a way of financing it, but don't talk about our fees at the national level. It's a sensitive subject. And I think everybody knows that as much as we may downplay it, it has it has a sort of minimal, as you said, impact on the incomes of the agency, because that's what they depend on. That's a good part of the resources that the agencies depend on. So what we are doing is that I think we need to also reach a win-win situation. Because for the industry, for instance, if you go through the continental process, right, and you get your product quicker into the market, there are some gains that the industry are also getting through that. But I think it's a two-way process. It is firstly the industry understanding that if I get my product quicker into the market in a very efficient manner, what are those gains? There are also, income gains to the industry because the product is introduced quicker into the market. So it should not just be expected that it's the NRA that needs to reduce the fees because the workload is reduced. The industry is also gaining. So it is that academia, I think we need to do to get into that deeper and see where is the balance. When we are looking at actually the financial sustainability of this continental, regional, and national, we are looking at that, understanding where are the gains. And I think ultimately, it will also require the regulator to make a decision so that we show the value of these continental and regional mechanisms that we are establishing and the reliance mechanism. Let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are running out of time. I will seek the audience indulgence to now just have 1 minute each for the panelists. The last few words. Rwanda, I liked that big tree. I come away very positive thinking AMA is not late. It is a big tree. It's growing into a very, very big tree with lots of fruit. So starting with Rwanda, Vedasti, what is your parting message briefly?
Thank you so much. I would say that the only big message is about collaboration. If we are together, we are capable to find out a solution to any challenge. Thank you.
Diana?
Thank you. What I would say, I still insist, or I urge AMA to continue the spirit of involvement, because along the way, the NRAs gain capacity among themselves. And at the end of the day, even the public is also going to benefit after the NRAs have gained more capacity on that area. Thank you.
Okay, Gugu?
Sorry, I'm going to say a few more words.
That's it, that's in order.
So I'm going to, because Professor raised the issue of harmonizing capacities within the agencies, and just to talk about what Chim alluded to, that was trying to set up a College of African Regulatory Science Professionals, which will harmonize all the regulatory professionals, both from industry and from the regulatory side. So eventually we will have all these harmonized and people will be members of the college, hopefully. So we're working on that with the NEPAD agency. Then the issue of the shortage of skills. I've been doing capacity development since the 90s for regulators. And of course, yes, we do keep churning them out. I'm not too sure that it's so much. You won't get it because resources are not there. So it's limited resources that we have. Can be obtained, but it's just that we have limited resources. So I think about that. And then guidelines. I've been urging that we need to change our approach to guideline review and adopt the RCH approach, where industry is always on the table. And therefore, even before they leave the room, they know what they need to comply with. They don't have to have this constant dialogue with them. And therefore, we can even include people like CSIR and business development agencies, etc. So I guess then
wise words indeed.
Yeah, so For me, I think he raised an important point. You are only as strong as your neighbor. Of course, understanding that we are all not going to move towards MO3, WLA, all of us. However, I think if we are networked, if we collaborate, and if we are able to rely on each other, that's the only way AMA is going to be strong. So as AMA, yes, it's a shell that has been prepared for us, but it is the regulators and everyone else as stakeholders that are going to fill that shell and make it functional. So we look forward to the support of everyone to make sure that this works as a collective and a well-networked system across the continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure your initial round of applause was in anticipation. Now give the real. And I'm very thankful to the audience. It was very interactive, and it was a fabulous experience. Have a good day. We still have more that will be coming from the regulatory perspective. Thank you very much.